Well, I figured out how to reach Ethan Hawke, who is, I guess, a little harder to reach these days since we don't see him in the movies and whatnot. Anywho, I've been kind of wondering why this smoking habit of his has been lingering for so long. I mean, he was a smoker in his prior lifespan as my father, and he's a smoker now, and he was so... I hate to be honest. He was so delectable as a young man before he started to smoke. Anywho, and lose his voice to boot. His aura was beautiful. I mean, God gracious. Anyway, so what's behind the smoking? Why would somebody smoke? Well, Charlie Lutz always used to use the metaphor of smoking. Always used to use smoking as a metaphor for worrying. That was his way to symbolize worrying without having to say worry. He would just said, "Stop smoking," or something along those lines, because it had to do with worrying. Well, I'll take a guess. When I had a volleyball class, co-ed volleyball class at Santa Monica College back in, I want to say 1989-ish, volleyball I kind of enjoyed, and co-ed volleyball I felt like it was a game of equals. It wasn't just all boys or all girls. So I felt it was a very egalitarian game. And one day I went into class. It was in a gymnasium. I entered the gymnasium, and before class started, or as it was starting, I had to turn and walk away, and I couldn't give an explanation to the teacher, and I wasn't about to, and I never went back. And I never went back to volleyball either. It was the most shocking revelation to discern the imagery, the emotional and visual imagery of what my father went through at some point in his childhood when his father, my grandfather, discovered my father masturbating. And I believe that's why Ethan Hawke smokes. It's a little bit of a tongue twister there. Because, it's nothing to do with, that he worships women, obviously, or else his current wife wouldn't have a problem trying to remind him now, watch it, or am I getting my actors mixed up? Uh-oh. I'm in deep trouble. No, I'm not getting them mixed up. No, smoking has to do with masturbation. And masturbation, okay, so it's got its good point. You're facing yourself. You're not solving anything, and you're throwing away opportunities, but you're also throwing away the pressure and the frustration that goes with that pressure of not knowing how to deal with the pressure, how to resolve it. So you just blow off the steam, the excess steam, in a pleasant way, in a pleasantly distracting methodology. So what does smoking have to do with? Well, it's avoiding facing the memory of what my grandfather instilled in my father. And I'll tell you what vision I saw. What my grandfather did was he whipped him. He whipped my father. Probably used his belt. And as he was doing so, he was exclaiming that this is not something that we humans do. Maybe aliens do it. This is how foreign he felt it was to the human experience. Now, my grandfather was a Presbyterian minister who did not have a church of his own. He simply went from town to town, starting a church, and then once it got going, he'd move on to the next town. So he merely started churches and then left it up to somebody else to maintain and run them. But he was a minister, and my father's brother was a theologian, taught college classes, could speak various languages, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew, probably Latin as well, besides English, and besides German, because they were of German extraction. Their parents were natives of Germany. So my grandfather got out of Germany after before World War I, because he didn't want to have anything to do with what was happening, the militarization of Germany. He had sung in the boys' choir, a specific choir that had sung for the king, Wilhelm Kaiser, the Kaiser. So it was a very, a nice position to be in. But he had to give all that up because to avoid, war, because they were pacifists, and that's what my father was during World War II. He was a pacifist. He got out of the war and worked on the roads, Civil Corps, building roads across the Rocky Mountains. So my grandfather whipped him and instilled within my father this idea that masturbation is so alien to the human experience that it is foreign, it is alien, it is, non-human. The image I got was not even that it was animal. It wasn't even that. It was alien. It was outside of planetary experience. Probably because he looked to the animals and figured, hey, they don't masturbate. He hadn't seen the squirrels. Apparently he didn't pay attention to the squirrels. Anyway, be that as it may. But this is why I think Ethan Hawke smokes, and why he still smokes to this day. Not related to the worship or adoration of women. No, it's an unrelated theme. I think. I mean, I can't see the relationship. I can't see, because masturbation has to do with yourself. But in this case, it has to do with authority. And an authority figure you can't resolve, because it's a parent. Parent says how things are to be, and that's just the way it is, and you don't like it, I'll whip you, I mean, you don't even get a chance to voice a counter opinion. You're going to be whipped. What? You're going to... Where's it going to get you to talk back, You just whip some more. So, that didn't work. Oh well, I opened my mouth, and where did it get me? So there's nothing else to say. I think that's what's behind the smoking habit. So, it's not something in this lifetime, obviously. It's not something psychoanalysis could render. Maybe deep hypnosis can reach back to that memory. I don't know. I had the good opportunity, the good fortune that a friend of mine was able to open up this awareness between myself and Ethan. And now that he's not around, I don't get that liveliness automatically inspired. But I guess once in a while I put my attention on it, or for some reason I find myself putting my attention on it, and I wonder, well, what else could I have discovered had I continued to put my attention on this topic? And so one of the unresolved mysteries that I was curious at resolving was, why does he smoke? Because he doesn't strike me as a smoker. He doesn't strike me as somebody who needs power. So why would he go for power if he doesn't need it? He had everything going for him as a young man. Everything. Good looks, everything. Why did he opt for power? Why did he feel powerless? Now, I'll say something else, and I'm stretching myself, but I'm going to say this. My mother had an abusive father. The kind of abuse in which the person tests everyone to look to see if they can be their equal, to better them, or to be there, to stand up to them. And my mother stood up to her father, and was considered by my grandfather on my mother's side to be his equal. Now, obviously, my grandfather on my father's side didn't allow that. He wasn't looking to abuse somebody just to test you to see if you could stand up to him and be his equal. Quite the contrary. He was going to be on top of you and dominate you, and that was, and you don't like it, he'll whip you, you know. But on my mother's side, it was different. On my mother's side, it was merely a test. And I had a kitty. So I got to see this firsthand. The kitty would test everybody. And if you could pass the test for one whole week, she'd become the best of your friends. But if you had to bring a new person into the mix, she'd start the routine all over again and test them by being a nuisance, by being annoying, you know. Anything to get you aroused. Could be another cat, you know, another human. Didn't matter who. She tested everybody. She was so insecure. But she was looking to see if you could be her equal, if you could be patient enough to wait for her to decide. Oh, look at that. He's put up with me. He's all right. He'll do. Oh, phew, good to know that. So that was my maternal grandfather's approach. Now, for some reason, though, it boomeranged on my mother, her standing up to her father, in which there was something wrong. And since she was the kind of person who took certain secrets to her grave, I'll never know what it is. All I know is she was jealous that I should have a relationship with my father and pushed us apart. And drove us out of the house, and it's probably the only way I would have been born anyway. I would have probably miscarried had she not separated from him, start to separate. But she went further, and my father didn't help because he blamed her. His usual routine, every time she got pregnant, he blamed her. Afterwards, after the baby was born. Well, no, that's not true. No, before he was born. No, afterwards, she said, he always, upon sight of the child, it just redeemed him, and he stopped kvetching. Well, anyway. So where was I going with that? So there was some non-forgiveness that was transferred onto my father's shoulders by my mother that had no bearing being there. It was transferred from her father. Now, she married him in the first place to, give her father the finger, so to speak. I can't remember the right word. Sorry. Spite. Spite. S-P-I-T-E. Spite. To spite her father. She married my father. And that backfired on her. Everything backfired. Because the two grandfathers got along peachy keen. They even looked alike. They had the same nose, same facial structure. One was German, the other Russian. But, the maternal was Russian and the paternal was German. But they looked like cousins or something, It was amazing. And they got along peachy keen. So my mother thought she was spiting her father because her mother made a big deal about, oh, is he Jewish? Oh, he's not? Oh my God, he's vegetarian? Even worse. So my mother thought she was spiting her father, but it turned out to backfire on her because they got along so well once they got to know each other. They had so much in common. They were abusers. They just did it differently for different reasons, but they were both abusive. I'm sure they got along just peachy. They compared notes and laughed. Well, they had a great time, I'm sure. It's like two mafiosos getting together. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I can't stand this. Sometimes it's too much. Let's see, what else? Did I cover everything? So this is what I think is behind smoking. I'm just guessing. Could be wrong. Now, what I add is a little optional material here. Nudity is a form of masturbation. It's also a form of foreplay, but it's also a form of masturbation. Doesn't mean it's supposed to lead to masturbation. Doesn't mean it's supposed to lead to foreplay or sex. Nudity can be an end in its own right and not lead to anything. But it is a form of self-pleasure, and by definition, Masturbation is self-pleasure. So that makes the two equivalent in a sense. What else? Cigarette smoking is a form of self-pleasure. So obviously it's a replacement. And to give up smoking, you'd have to go back to the other. And will his wife be understanding enough? His current wife? I remember now. Why did I bring up the abusive father business? Well, I'm beginning to realize there's a word for abuse. It's called sadism, or masochism, if you prefer. I don't know the difference between them. Well, let's just blend it all together because I don't know the difference. Getting pleasure out of somebody else's pain, in other words. The reason why I bring this up, I saw a movie the other night called Belle de Jour, and it's from 1967. It was shot in 1966. Catherine Deneuve, if I'm saying her name right, Geraldine Page, her name is easier to say. She had a supporting role. They were the two gals among the other actors and actresses in a movie in which the subject was sadism. And I did not get this. I watched the movie and I'm flipping through it because, what's this sick violence? What is this? Disgusting. The husband's whipping the wife. My father would have understood this. Because, Anyway. I didn't, though. Because I was neglected. I wasn't abused the same way. Nobody paid attention. It was like, he's invisible. He's so quiet. Yeah, I wonder why. Because you shut me up. And I wasn't about to fight back. So I don't understand sadism. And when my brother did it to me, I didn't understand it. I didn't know it had a word to go with it. But now I'm armed with ammunition, a word. The word gives me ammunition. Oh, great. Because now I know there's a standard expression in English to describe it. It's in one word, sadism. Okay, sadistic. To get pleasure from somebody else's pain. And I regret that things have changed such that nudity is no longer tolerated at the very least by society like it was in the 70s, let alone people be amused by it. It actually freaks people out. And remaining a nudist, I found myself becoming sadistic because I got pleasure even more from the excitement that people had when they were upset over me. And because I couldn't tell the difference. All I could tell was I could feel their excitement. And so that would turn me on. But I didn't know they were freaking out. I found that out afterwards, usually. So unfortunately, it turned into sadism, but only because society turned into a bunch of freakheads. I mean, my God, the peace of mind that was in the 70s is like out the window. So that puts me in an upper corner, puts my back up against the wall, which need not be. So it's really a fault of society for doing this to us. It's an us thing. It's not a me thing. It's an us thing. And it's for lack of meditators. Like millions of people were initiated into the easiest form of meditation on this planet at this time. And yet how many people keep it up? A handful. Millions. A mere handful. Fine, you don't like TM? Go do something else. It's just a lot easier and the results are a lot more forthcoming. But, hell, when millions toss it aside, it kind of shows you what sorry state this planet is in. We don't want to grow. God forbid we should grow too much. Anywho, why did I bring that up? Oh, the movie. So now I'm armed with a word, and I understand sadism for what it is. It's a word. It's not just a problem that keeps coming up. It's a word. The population on this planet seems to be sprinkled with sadists, and it only takes a few. Because they're not greedy, right? They just need one person to abuse at that moment, at that time. Just one. They're happy just with one. They'll abuse them sick, Just one. Just one. To infuse their signature upon that victim. To make a copy of themselves, basically. just one at a time. They're very frugal. Oh, how nice. But very target-oriented, because they will select somebody who can readily become a victim in their... It's like a sculptor sculpting clay, you know? It's like, oh, who can I sculpt? Who's got the right characteristic of personality that I could sculpt into the fashion, into the person I want to make them into, you know? And I say this very provocatively or openly, because I had to go to a lot of trouble to deprogram myself. You know, when they say you take somebody out of a cult and you got to deprogram them, I had to do that to myself because of the violence I went through. It had me programmed for violence. The only problem is I tend to turn everything on myself, not to somebody else. So I wasn't about to go and become sadistic or masochist against somebody else. I was about to do it to myself and commit suicide 3 years ago. So it became very apparent to me, very clear, that I had to deprogram myself. But how? Well, I took Leon Ernest Demon's biocircuitry and I boosted it with a bunch of capacitors that were interleaved capacitors that managed to create phase lock among my chakras. Well, the 8 chakras I was working with. 2 along the spine and 6 outside the spinal meridian. But a lot of deep, deep rest. Dreamless sleep. A sleep so deep, I repressed dreaming. It was so deep. So I could only do it in the daytime, because most of us need to dream. So I couldn't do it at night during normal sleep, but I did it in the daytime, and it managed to restructure my subtle bodies to be less unnatural. I mean, I couldn't get rid of all the violence and all the fear and all the vertigo and all the panic. I still have it, but it's a lot less than what it was. But it was turning me into a pacifist, like a monkish kind of personality. I didn't want to turn into one in order to completely heal myself of that violent signature that I had been given. So, but I managed to get rid of most of it, so I had to stop prematurely. But I got a lot of it out of me. So I had to deprogram myself. So I don't know what it would take in Ethan's case, but sadism, the reason why I brought it up. How can I say this without, it's not, let me put it this way. You know, some people will say, you know, Mel Brooks made a joke in the 2,000-year-old man routine with Carl Reiner. That somebody drove him to insanity. He made this joke. Oh, somebody drove me to insanity, and Carl Reiner said, oh my God, that's horrible. No, literally, they drove me to the psychiatrist. You know, something like that. They drove me to the They drove me to the, I was so nuts, they drove me to a psychiatrist. Oh, really? That's horrible. No, actually, they were my chauffeur. They drove me to the psychiatrist. Yeah, there. Finally said the joke right. So, if somebody drove him to reawaken his bad habit from his prior lifespan of smoking, then I could see why. Because karma came his way. And he got a chance to see what drove my mother so jealous that she had to separate us. And the best he's been able to do since confronting that awareness of not really knowing firsthand the kind of insanity that drove my mother to separate us is the best he can do is smoke. To not face what he does not know how to resolve. I mean, what do I do when I can't resolve something that's ugly that I come to an awareness of? I turn to food and I eat something. That's just emotional repression when we turn to something which has nothing to do with hunger. Telling us to how can you hunger for a cigarette? You can't. But even food, it's obvious. It's emotional repression is what the cigarette smoking is all about. But that's too vague to be of any use. I don't want to say who, because I don't know. the parties involved directly. But I suspect this is what happened. He was able to meet firsthand the karmic reason why my mother drove us apart, he and I, in his past life. By meeting firsthand the kind of personality that would do that would drive my mother to such jealousy. Because everything she was doing was backfiring on her. She married for spite, and everything's boomeranging on her. It's like, I didn't ask for this. I asked for the opposite. Talk about manipulation always going awry. It's when it's time to become spiritual, when manipulation doesn't work anymore. Domination fails you. You just give up. Stop it. Oh, this is so funny. What else? Did I cover everything that I wanted to cover? I think so. Yeah. It's a wonderful movie if you can and the only reason why I understand Beldiger for what it is because I turned on the audio commentary. Oh, is that what it's about? I didn't know. I thought it was pointless violence. No, it's not pointless. It's for a reason. Oh yeah, sadism. I forgot. It just isn't in my consciousness to be aware of such things. Oh well. So I didn't watch much of the movie, and I didn't watch a whole lot of the commentary. And fortunately, the commentary was an English-speaking commentator, so that helped a lot. Yes, thank you. Make it easy for me, because I'm not getting it. I'm kind of dumb in that department. Very inexperienced, very naive. But now that I have a word, I'm armed. I have a word. Sadistic. Now I know I can say, oh, that person and this person. Oh, now I know what they are. Oh, see, I could describe, but I couldn't put a single word to it. Now I can. A sadist. Okay. I'm armed with the power of a word. A single, short, tiny little word. What could be easier? Let's see. I think I've covered everything. Yeah, I'm just mumbling and repeating. Yeah, I don't like repeating. I don't need to emphasize. This is not something worth emphasizing. So, Ethan, I feel for you. I don't know how to help you. I couldn't. But I'm helping myself figure out these mysteries so that at least I don't have anything dark and brooding, to dwell on. It's clear, and I can understand it for what it is. The big picture, because the big picture is complicated. There's nothing simple about it. All these elements, my God, masturbation, sadism, it's like, God, that's just beginning. Just warming up. It's not even that simple. It's very complicated. And then you have the loss of memory. You come into another lifespan, and, there went it gives you a fresh start, but you don't see through your problems. You can't see where they originate from. So, I just thought I'd throw it out to the universal awareness here. The few people who listen to this video, maybe by way of the superfluid state of cosmic mind, it'll get transferred around, and some of it will seep through to Ethan Hawke's consciousness, and in maybe his subconsciousness, and it'll peep through a little bit, like a little chip, like a little woodpecker chipping away, and a little breakthrough will be a little easier for him to make, without any of us dealing with him directly. Just something, karma being passed around from one person to the next, both through subtle means as well as gross, obvious means, to help him out here, because pray for him. Let's put it that way. Come out and say it. Well, that's making a conscious effort, to do something. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. Just listen to me talk about this is enough. That's all you have to do is listen. You don't have to do anything more. You don't even have to pray for him. Don't even have to do that. That'd be nice. It would help. But, yeah, it can't hurt, that's for sure. Okay, now I've said everything.